All right. Good morning, everyone. It is 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I am today in Washington, D.C. Good morning. My name is Bobby Mann. I'm so excited and so honored to be introducing this call for the final time before the next iteration. So just as a reminder to folks, we are going to be merging the Monday and the Friday calls. And so the new time for this call is going to be at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Did I get that right, Amber? Yes? Are we? Okay,
yes,
perfect.
I was doing math in my
Correct.
head as well. 11.
Okay, perfect. So because of that, folks, we're going to give it a few minutes before we actually get this show on the road, but we have a question of the day for all of you, just to really honor and celebrate all the amazing presenters over the last couple of years that have been joining this call. We want to know, what is something that you have heard on this Monday call that you have been able to implement into your organization? So I would love for folks to start dropping those into the chat. And I'd also love for someone to unmute and share. I know Josh is always so amazing at this, my guy, Josh. Josh, what is something over the last couple of years that you've learned that you were able to implement? Look at that, you're already in the chat.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, but there's so many things that this call has provided. I was just trying to think, almost every single one of my programs has been touched, from vaccine clinics to veterinary assistants to pet food pantry. But probably one of my favorite ones was the apprenticeship that I got to take last fall, that really gave us an opportunity to really revamp our crisis care program to allow us to provide more temporary care for owners that are going through crisis. So we went from basically a very small program to now it's definitely one of our top programs that we're offering service to our community for. So that was a big one for this call.
I love it. Thanks for always sharing, Josh. And a reminder, folks, we are sharing something that you have learned on this call that you've been able to implement at your organization. We're hoping to take at least 5 minutes just to celebrate all of you and the hard work that you all have put in. As a reminder, these calls are going to be merged, the Monday call and the Friday call, starting in just a couple weeks after a summer break. So the link that you see in the chat is to re-register for the call. So make sure that you click that link and get registered so you can get those emails in your agenda. Amber, I would love for you to pick on someone else. Is there someone else that you saw in the chat that you'd like to call on?
Oh, I've been so busy dropping things that I may just have to pick on someone randomly. All right. Jess Roper, I am always interested in what you have to say. You always have such little beads of wisdom. What is something that you've learned on this call that you've been able to implement in your work life?
Yeah, thank you so much for thinking of me, Amber. I think really one of the top things that I've learned is just the importance of listening to other people and hearing what they're doing, and taking that in and not just thinking what do I do? What do I think about, what have I done historically, but really having that open mind of seeing people are doing things differently everywhere, right? And they're trying new things and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and then having this opportunity to share out. So just, being present and taking that in. I do a lot of support work in my role, so I don't necessarily implement a lot of programs, but just being able to hear those ideas and then pass them along to the folks on the front lines who are doing that work, saying this is an amazing thing that somebody's doing in Florida or in Georgia or in Texas, try it out, see if it works.
I love it, Jess. Thanks so much. So we'll just take just a couple more minutes before we get it kicked off. Kristen, it's so exciting to hear that you're doing a Maddie's apprenticeship. And obviously these calls are thanks to Maddie. So make sure that you're on the forum, make sure that you're participating in the webinars and the webcasts. There's just always so much great content coming from the team at Maddie's Fund. And we also want to celebrate them for really starting these calls and getting them off the ground. So thanks to Maddie. All right, folks, we'll keep those questions coming in, or the answers to that question coming in the chat. We definitely want to catalog all of those. And for some of these great questions, the Maddie's team might be reaching out to you to be featured in a blog or be interviewed. So we're just so excited to have all of you here. Before we get it kicked off for national updates, I know we normally channel our inner Mary Smith, who has been a big part of these calls and sending a little bit of motivation. But I actually just wanted to send a little bit of love to our community. I know that Friday and this weekend, was a lot of change in our country's climate, and a lot of change that folks are going through, a lot of emotions going through all of us. As a facilitator of this call, I do not want to speak from my personal opinion. I don't think that my opinion holds weight. I really think what holds weight is how you all feel. And so instead of speaking from opinion, I want to speak from fact, where a place from fact is I know there are a lot of people that have been emotionally invested in the things that are going on and have been emotionally impacted by some of the things and policy changes that have been going on in our country. And so I am just here to say that we are thinking of you. And if you are looking for a space to have these sorts of conversations, to have safe spaces to be able to talk within affinity groups that might feel the same way about certain situations, we are here to create those spaces. So I'm going to drop my email on the chat. Please feel free to reach out to me. We want to make sure that we can all collaborate. We can make sure that people are feeling that they're in inclusive spaces and that people can feel seen and heard. So sending so much love to everybody all across the country and across the world, as Kathy from Canada would always say, but wanted to start off the call with that. So with that, let's go ahead and get it started with some national updates before we get into our presentation. So any national org that has an update, now is the time.
Well, thank you, Bobby, for all you've done and all you've said this morning, and excited for the new upcoming merged meetings as well. Just a reminder to everyone that you can enter to win a monthly giveaway through Maddie's Fund. I've dropped the link in the chat. Today is the last day of last meeting of the month of June. So please enter and watch all the recordings on demand, so you can enter and per person. So if you have more than one person at your organization viewing on demand, please have them enter too.
Thanks,
Thank
Irene.
you.
Last call. Jess, I feel the exact same way. Super excited for the Best Friends Conference. I have the opportunity to be there personally as well. If any of you are going to be there, please say so in the chat. We'd love to get some folks together to at least say hello, to see each other in 3D instead of in 2D. I think it's going to be a really fun experience. All right, well, I am very, very excited about today because as I had discussed earlier, there are so many things in this world, in this country, that can separate us. But what I love about these calls are that we talk and discuss about the things that bring us together, which are very rooted in data, evidence, analytics, project management, animal flow, and we're going to be talking about all of those things today. I'm super excited for Jacksonville Humane Society's Long Stay Task Force presentation that's going to come up a little later. But before that, I want to really, really geek out on some analytics. I have personally had the opportunity and privilege of joining Humane Rescue Alliance, where I am drinking out of multiple fire hoses, learning from all of these subject matter experts at our organization about the way that we're utilizing data and making sure that we're using it efficiently to serve our communities. And so we have Rebecca, our digital content manager, that's going to be talking to us today about web analytics. You know, I think oftentimes in animal welfare, our sort of go-to is social media. We're always posting on our Facebook pages. People are going into Twitter and Instagram. But I think the thing that we forget is we're often talking to very insular communities. In most situations, because of those analytics, we're really only reaching a portion of the people that follow us. And the other thing is, we always want to talk about increasing customer service at our front door and welcoming people. But what we never, ever really think about is how people find us in the first place. And for many people, the data is showing us our website is that home base, and not even finding our domain by knowing it. They're Googling us in our own communities. So we're going to talk a little bit about how at Humane Rescue Alliance, we're looking at that data, analyzing that data, and changing our programs and practices to be able to better serve the clients that need us. So Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bobby. I'm so excited to be here today. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Cavedon. I am the digital content manager at the Humane Rescue Alliance, as Bobby said. My job basically allows me to oversee our paid and organic marketing efforts And a large part of my job encompasses overseeing our website and the data that we collect through our website to not only optimize user experience, but to also make strategic decisions as an organization. And as Bobby mentioned, it's definitely not lost on me that having someone dedicated to the work that I'm doing isn't feasible for all organizations. But with that being said, this presentation is really just meant to be a very high level introduction to website data, whether you're a one-person shelter or a one-person marketing team. The goal is to really just plant the seed that this type of thing exists and that it's fairly easy to do if you wanted to do it by yourself, not to sell myself short. All right, so our agenda for today, I'll quickly go over why your website is the single most important marketing tool, why website data collection is super important, and then I'll give some very basic takeaways that you can use to collect and analyze your data. So why your website is so important. I feel like this is something we all kind of know it's important, as Bobby just set up so wonderfully. It is very important, but we often focus so much time and energy on crafting these really compelling emails and social media posts with these really amazing calls to action. And we forget that there's this whole other experience that's happening after a user clicks on that call to action, and it's happening on our website. So if that experience is really confusing or it's frustrating, that really negates all the hard work that you put into that email or that social media post or whatever form of marketing. So in many ways, these forms of communication are acting as vessels to capture your audience and direct them to take their next action on your website. And about 76% of the time, people are interacting with your website before they even reach your door. So in this way, your website is really the center of your brand's marketing ecosystem. Other channels exist and they're extremely important, of course. I don't want to downplay them, but your website is really at the center of all these things. And it's where many users take action. And it's also a key source of retention and referral. And for that reason, it really needs to be your most engaging and effective tool that you have in your arsenal. Now let's talk about why data tracking is so important. So let's say that we're building a traffic light at a busy intersection and we put in these traffic counters at the intersection to count how many cars come through. If we didn't collect that data, we would all either be sitting at a traffic light for way longer than we need to be, or the light would be so quick that we wouldn't make it through. And I know we've all been there, but this same concept applies to your website. By making decisions based on data, you're making decisions based on concrete information rather than those kind of anecdotal, I think this is happening, but I don't really know if it's happening statements. So there are so many reasons why website data is important, but I'm not going to keep you here all day. I am just going to talk about two. First, it's because your website data tells you a story, and that story is part of your customer journey. So a customer journey is how a customer interacts with your organization to achieve a goal. And I want to be really intentional by making sure that I emphasize that website data is really only a small part of your customer journey, but it's an important part because your customer journey is encompassing of every touch point. It's not meant to exist in a silo. It's supposed to be a function of all your different departments. But with that being said, you can use your website data to better understand what your customer does on your website and what they're looking for and what questions they may have. And the worst thing that you can do is assume your customer journey based on internal perspectives. The second reason that analyzing your website data is super important is because it's critical to your search engine optimization strategy or your SEO strategy. So Google and a lot of other search engines are becoming increasingly user intent based, which means it's no longer just enough for us to throw in a couple of keywords and expect Google to find us this really authoritative source and reward us in the search engine results pages. So once you really so you need to have website data basically to really tailor your content around the needs and pain points and desire that your audience has, and you can use website data to understand those things. So once you really understand your customer journey and have a clear understanding of your website, you can use your goals to really position your website to work like a funnel. And I want to take a moment to talk about website funnels because this is a really important point to keep in mind as we're analyzing your data. Your website should be built around these different funnels that are representative of your goals. So to start to build a funnel, you want to first identify your goal. So in this example, I had my goal being foster sign up completions. And then what I did was I worked backwards to identify the steps that my users are taking to achieve that goal. And much like an actual funnel, the volume of visitors at the top of the funnel trickles down as you get closer and closer to your goal. And you can really use these funnels to think strategically about the goals you're trying to achieve on your website and to further break down how you optimize for these goals or repair leaks, which I'll talk about later. So how do I collect this data that we're talking about? My number one go-to tool is Google Analytics. I use it for everything. It's what HRA uses. And I also think that a lot of other organizations use it. And so with that being said, there's a ton of resources out there. There's YouTube videos, there's Facebook groups, especially dedicated to it. There's really, if there's a question that you have or you get stuck, there is definitely a resource out there for you. And then also chances are the platform that you host your website on has some very basic and preliminary data available to you, whether you know it or not. You might have stumbled upon it as you've been updating something on your website and been like, ooh, what's that? That looks scary. Don't want to deal with that. Come back later. But it would be really, you can use that data to kind of dip your toe into it and see what's going on your website if you're not really ready to install a mechanism like Google Analytics. Right, so now we understand why website data is so important and we have our tools that we need. What do we look for? This is the really fun part. We want to look for our drivers or what's bringing people to our website, our barriers where people are abandoning our website or where they're getting stuck in our funnel. And we also want to look for our hooks or what's persuading website users to visit. Let's start with looking for drivers. And this is HRA's Google Analytics dashboard. So this gives me a general overview of all the different mediums that are bringing traffic to our website. And it's really important to look at this report for two reasons. The first is because you want to understand how your users are currently finding your website and identify areas where you can grow and improve. And the second is because you really want to get an idea of the quality of traffic coming in through each source. And as you'll soon learn, not all traffic quality is equal. So the quality of traffic can be measured in a couple different ways. It could be measured based on how engaged your audience is. So if they're staying on your website for a really long time, if they're viewing multiple pages per session, if they're really clicking around and really interested. And the other way that you can measure it is based on conversions. So Google Analytics has this function where you can basically set your own goal. So I have goals set up for donation button clicks. I have goals set up for adoption button clicks and foster, which is what I have in this example. So for this particular example, I set up my goal to be foster form offsite clicks. And I can see in this column not only how many goal completions there have been during this time frame, but really what traffic sources are bringing in the most conversions. And I can see that my page search is really the one that's generating the most. So I might look into that a little bit further. I might look and see if there's a certain keyword that I'm targeting in my Google ads that's causing that. I might invest more money and time into really growing my Google ads and getting this conversion rate even higher. So those are kind of the things that you can do. And it's really important to see and understand where you're doing well. Maybe you're investing time and energy into something that just isn't working the way that you thought it was. And you can kind of tailor that based on this report. So then you can go a little bit deeper. So this report shows my top drivers of traffic over the past month. And by doing this, you might see something really interesting. So for me, it's this Reddit item, because I know in my head that HRA doesn't have a Reddit account, but I could do some looking into it and I could see if I can find the actual posts that people are clicking on to get to our website from Reddit. I could look and see what page they're landing on. I could look and see how long they're staying on our website, if they're completing any of my conversions. And maybe this is something that it's worth HRA investing in. Maybe it's worth us getting a Reddit account because here's an audience that seems really engaged and really likes our content, and maybe we're not reaching them right now. So that's kind of one way that you can use this report. And then we'll talk about barriers. So this is an exit page report from Google Analytics. And basically it shows me what's the last page that people are leaving before, or people are viewing before they leave my website. So this is where you kind of have to know your own website, because I know my website, and I know that when I see things like animal search pages, I'm not concerned about that, because we work in animal welfare with so many external sources. And one of ours that HRA uses is when we have our animal search page, we have these individual profiles of the animals. And once they click onto that, it brings them off our website to AdOpets. So that in Google Analytics, the way that they see that is they're clicking off of that and they're leaving, and that's a bad thing. But actually, I know that they're still engaged with HRA. I just know it's not happening on my domain. But with that being said, you can look and see if there are opportunities. So for example, I see this blog post. I know this blog post really well because it's always a top driver of traffic from Google onto HRA's website. And I say, you know, how can I make these people stay longer? Because obviously they're coming on my website, they're reading this blog post and they're leaving. So what are some things that I can do to make them really move around and get to know us better? Maybe I can review my internal linking strategy in my blog post and think about, like, is there areas that I can link and direct them to other places? Maybe and this is actually something we're doing, develop a little section at the bottom that has like similar blog posts that they can go and click on. So this report can be both an area of opportunity, and it can be an area where your users are getting stuck. So this is an example of a funnel. This is not from Google Analytics. I couldn't scrunch it on the screen, right? But there's a very similar function on Google Analytics, and it kind of shows you why these funnels are so important, right? Because you have all your steps that users are completing. And if you see, like, for example, between step 2 and 3, my users are really dropping off. What's going on? What's wrong? Why aren't they completing the steps? You can go in and troubleshoot and see, okay, is there a barrier there? Is there a reason why this is happening? And more often than not, I can tell you that a link is broken. Almost every time I've done this, a link has been broken, and it's the easiest fix, and it like kills me inside that that's what it was. But maybe and once you get a little bit more advanced in data tracking, you can really narrow in and say, okay, is there like a particular part of this page where they're dropping off? But for right now, it's just a really easy way to say, okay, something's not working. Something is deterring people from completing my goal. And what is that thing? And the next thing that you want to look for is your hook. So this is what persuades your users to take action. And this comes really when you have a more established tracking in place and a better idea of what your goals and funnels are, that you can actually start to test out what words, phrases, pictures, landing pages, what of those things motivates your audience to take action. So this is an example of something we're testing at HRA right now. So we had this area on the homepage that we weren't really using, and I wanted to test to see if this space could be more strategically used. So we have this dog named Betsy who's just really stressed in the shelter. She really needs a foster or adoptive home. So I've been changing different items every 2 weeks and tracking the result. I have a little tracking code right here. And it shows me on my Google Analytics how many people are clicking it. And basically what I've been looking for is, if I change the picture, are more people clicking? Is that driving more? If I change the landing page, are more people clicking? And if I, and like next week, I might change this little title to see if I can make it more compelling. So you can really start to narrow down and see what your audience is responding to, and also think more strategically about how you use the space on your website. Maybe something that you put on there that's really valuable real estate, like on your homepage, just isn't working. And you can think about more how you can use that space more strategically and see if this is an option for you. So a few key takeaways and action items. If you do anything today, it's set up a system like Google Analytics in place. I know it sounds really scary, but even if it's something that you set up today and you're like, I'm not going to touch it for months, it's summer, I'm going away, I am done, we're super busy. Data collection is not retroactive. So if you are like in a few months, okay, I finally have time to look at this, you can go in and have a good amount of baseline data available to you when you're ready to start analyzing and looking into it a little bit deeper. And I also know, I want to mention that I know this sounds super daunting, but there's 2 things that I think can help with this. So number one, There's so many resources out there. Again, like I said, I named a bunch of different resources, but you can absolutely consult those. And I promise that if you have a question, there's an answer out there. And number two, you can have a really tech savvy volunteer do this for you. I am the perfect example of that because I actually started at HRA doing this work. And I ended up getting my dream job here, doing exactly what I was doing as a volunteer, and it's been amazing. So there are people out there who have a computer, have a weekend, maybe can't make it into the shelter, but are wanting to do this type of thing and are really passionate about it. So that's absolutely something to consider. And then begin looking at your drivers, understand what's bringing traffic to your website, understand where you're doing really well, and understand where you can improve. And then think about more strategically about how you can utilize your time. Maybe, like I said, you're putting in effort somewhere that it's just not working. And then think about your barriers where people are leaving your website. Is there anywhere on there where it's like really troublesome and you're worried and you're saying, why are people leaving this? Is something wrong? Like I said, 9 times out of 10, it's a very simple reason why it's happening. And then the last thing that you can do is to set one goal for your website and generate a funnel by looking and working backwards from that goal. And I think just even doing that as an exercise will get you thinking about your website a little bit differently and the impact that it has on your users. Then here's my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or need help with something. I love doing this type of thing. I'm obviously very passionate about it, and I'm more than willing to help you. So thank you so much.
As always, Rebecca, I'm just blown away by you. Folks, remember those fire hoses I told you I was drinking out of? This is exhibit 1, a fire hose of just amazingness. And I want to consider this like, and Rebecca, I'll ask you to just stop sharing that for a sec. And then I'm going to consider this a privileged sandwich, because at the beginning of this call at Humane Rescue Alliance, we acknowledged the privilege of having the resources to be able to look at stuff like this. Rebecca covered the real tofu of this project, and I want to end it with acknowledging that privilege as well. We know this is above and beyond, but really what our goal is because we have these resources, we want to be able to troubleshoot a lot of these sort of tactics and tricks so that we can also help make program recommendations and strategy recommendations for all of you. But speaking of which, Rebecca, we did have a couple questions in the chat, and I do have one myself that I'd love to cover before we move on to our next presentation. So question number 1 is related to Google Ads. I think the idea of investing into sort of web traffic and web search can feel daunting for folks. How much should people even start with to make it worthwhile? Is this like a $10,000 conversation, or is this a $25 conversation?
So we actually have a Google ad grant, which is something to consider. We don't invest any money. Google basically gave us a grant and we use that money to do our Google ads. I cannot speak to the process of how we got that because that was before my time, but I know it's a thing that's out there. And I will say that it either works really well or it doesn't, because Google wants to prioritize people who are paying and not have grants. Unfortunately, that's the way that they are. But I would say from my past experience, I would play around with it first. I always think like investing a few $100s and seeing where it goes. I wouldn't, maybe like $300 and seeing where it goes, and then see what's working. But I know there's opportunities out there for things like Google ad grants. But that's been my experience with it.
Perfect. Irene just dropped the link to the grants, which is super exciting. And then it looks like there's a question about analytics changing. So Lindsay's asking, I keep seeing stuff about Google Universal Analytics changing. Do you have any input on this, Rebecca?
Yeah, it stinks. I'm so upset. It's changing. It's basically going away. It's not Google Analytics entirely. Universal Analytics is changing to Google Analytics 4, which is really awesome. For many people, I think it's more e-commerce based, but it stinks, is my basic advice. But with that being said, if you're going to set up Google Analytics, I would set up Google Analytics 4, and it's been out for a while. So I know there's a ton of resources out there. I myself have not dived into it yet because I'm such a universal user. Even if you set up Universal Analytics now and use it for the next year, it's definitely worth your time because it's just so valuable in the items it can show you. Google Analytics 4 or GA4, or whatever they're calling it, has all the same functions. It's just a different dashboard, a different layout. So that's my 2 cents on that, but I'm avidly against them getting rid of it. It'll be next year that they're saying no more universal, everyone go to GA4. But once you set up, it's not hard to set up your universal analytics and your GA4 at the same time if you wanted to have both. It's just the learning curve. I would invest more learning time into GA4 since universal is kind of going away.
Okay, Rebecca, I have one last question for you, and I'm putting on a completely different hat. So I don't work for HRA and help you look at these analytics. I actually run a small cat rescue in Idaho, and I really love looking at all of this stuff, but I have no idea what you were just talking about, but I really want to recruit a volunteer to help me with this. Is there any way that you could write for me as a small cat rescue, some sort of an email or a document where people even know what I'm asking for? Would you be able to help me with that?
Of course. Yes, I actually have the description that I applied for when I was a volunteer. I have my original application and everything, so I can absolutely provide you with that. And I can say that my boss had told me that when people had applied for that, it was like a lot of applications that came in. So there was a lot of interest, but I can absolutely share that.
Yeah, and remember, folks, this person does not literally have to be in your backyard to help you with these web analytics. So as much as that might have felt over your head, you're actually not too far from getting to the start line of this. As Rebecca mentioned, at least get these tools put onto your website. So when you do have the time and the space, because we know it's summer, life is busy, the kittens are coming, but when you have a little bit of downtime, this is super important information that you can't live without. Rebecca, thank you so much for your time today. Amber, I'm going to toss it over to you to introduce our next guests.
Hey, thank you, Bobby. Appreciate it. I am thrilled to hear from our next guests, Lindsay and Lawrence. They're from Jacksonville Humane. Everybody give a wave and a hello to them. So Jacksonville's implemented some really incredible programs, including a long stay task force. They have a partnership building collaborative called the Florida Leaders and Lifesaving Initiative. And lucky for us, they have all kinds of resources available to share with us through their Lifesaving University. And also a plug, Maddie's Fund will be hosting a webinar with Lindsay and Jacksonville this Wednesday, June 29th, in case you want to hear all of this information again, and maybe in a different format, or share with others, have others join. And Allison just dropped that link. So without further ado, thank you so much, Lindsay and Lawrence. Take it away.
Thank you, Amber. Appreciate that. So I'll go ahead and I'll jump in first. My name is Lawrence. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here, and I'm going to start by telling you a little bit more about the Florida Leaders and Lifesaving Initiative that Amber just told us about, as well as Lifesaving University. And then I'll kick it over to Lindsay, and she'll talk some more about our long stay task force, but she'll be able to speak to it in much more length and much more breadth later this week. So initially, first, our Florida Leaders and Lifesaving Initiative, Unite, Inspire, Engage. We are really working hard to try to bring agencies from across the entire state of Florida together. We're a collaborative effort of private agencies, municipal agencies, and also private clinics. We have a very robust animal control coalition here in the state of Florida. We also do have a private organization, a private federation of animal welfare shelters here in Florida as well. But there's an opportunity, we definitely saw a gap to try to bring everybody together. In Florida, the majority of the animals do enter the shelter system on the municipal side, no surprise, but there are a lot of resources on the private side as well. And there's also a third, almost untapped resource that we're not always thinking about in our private clinics as well. So we really wanted to be able to bring everybody together as much as we can to try to impact life-saving. Excellently muted myself. So this is our mission statement here. Florida Leaders in Lifesaving unites our shelters and clinics in a statewide mission to save the lives of dogs and cats in shelters, inspires collaborative action, and engages the hearts, hands, and minds of our communities. So Florida serves as a national leader in lifesaving. Because the reality is, and this is the 2020 map from Best Friends data, Florida is the 4th worst performing state for lifesaving in the country. And we have resources here. We know that there's opportunity to save more lives here. We shouldn't be the fourth worst performing state, given the amount of animal welfare organizations we have. We have a large number of no-kill communities here in the state of Florida, but there is just still so many deserts and gaps and animals losing their lives here that we really wanted to be able to take a close look and be a little bit more strategic with the animals that we're saving. We're not saving, unfortunately. So this gives you kind of an idea on a regional approach to our state. It's a lot of counties. Florida is geographically extremely challenging, very different. What's going on in the Panhandle and Escambia County versus what's happening in Broward and Miami-Dade County, two completely different challenges. So we know we have to be very strategic and thoughtful about how we address these problems. So looking at it from a regional standpoint was really, really important to us. The gray county there in the middle, Polk County, is actually one of the worst performing shelters in the entire country. They want to save more lives. We're working really, really hard with them. We're down there at least twice a month, helping them do more spay and neuter surgeries and getting more of their cats out. But there's a lot of animals that need to be saved here in the state of Florida. So one thing that was also very important to us in terms of Florida Leaders and creating this coalition was making it really, really easy, no barriers. So it's completely free for any brick and mortar animal shelter, municipal agency, or a nonprofit clinic to join Florida Leaders. No barriers at all. Because we know so much those are the groups that need the help, or those that don't have the resources to pay for a $300 registration for an association. Then we also now host, this coming September is going to be our second annual summit. Statewide, people from all over the entire state of Florida will join. It's the executive level, the high leadership level from each organization coming together to strategize, come up with new plans for 2023. We're really blessed to have some great speakers coming to our September summit this year. Amy Seiler from Dogs Playing for Life, Monica Friend Tarrant, a good friend of ours as well. She will be there speaking, as will Caitlin Quinn from Heart Speak. So we're really excited to have some national names lending their expertise to the group for us as well. And this is from the 2020 data set from the UF put out across the entire state of Florida. And one of the big hallmarks of the work that we do that's so important for Florida Leaders is somehow, and you can see it on the 2021 there, we imported almost 10 times as many dogs into the state of Florida as we exported out. At the same time, we're seeing that same number, we're the fourth worst performing state in the country, but we're importing nearly 10,000 animals into the state of Florida, dogs, and only importing 1,000. So that is one of the hallmark keystone pieces of the work that we're doing is reassessing that need and how can we reduce the number of animals coming into the state of Florida while increasing the number of animals leaving the state of Florida? And can we be much more reliable, self-sustaining by supporting one another instead of animals coming in from out of state and animals then also leaving? So Jacksonville's a great example of that. We haven't imported animals from outside of the state of Florida here in a decade. And that's such a huge piece of why Jacksonville is seen as a national no-kill model, that we take care of ourselves and each other first so that we can then make sure to impact and help others. So if we ever have a challenge here at the city shelter, we're the first people that the Animal Care and Protective Services, the Jacksonville City Shelter, is going to call. And we're going to support them first. We're not going to take animals even from a neighboring county if the city shelter is struggling. If our community, if Duval County is strong, then we can start to take a look at maybe some neighboring counties or helping other places across the state of Florida. But it always starts with supporting somebody local first. And then a hub and spoke model is important for us as well in terms of when we do engage in transport, find it to be a much better use of our time, effort, and resources if we're able to transfer animals in to one central location before they then go on their way to somewhere else. Historically, when we've tried to help with transports, it's been a little bit piecemeal at times, where there'll be 10, 15, 20 animals coming from here to there, and then we're all duplicating efforts all across, and we're driving past each other on I-95, and that's not a great use of time, effort, and resources. So by having one or two central organizations, people coming around and basically being the hub there to take those animals in and then ship them elsewhere is a much better, much more efficient use of resources. So we've started doing much more of that this year, certainly. And we acknowledge not all situations are created equal. We are in the South. Hurricanes are a reality down here. So there are times where we will tap on one another in the event of a disaster or a hoarding case or something like that, that we may look or think differently about transports, but it's always going to be, is my neighbor who's closest to me, are they in need? And does it make more sense? Is it more strategic for me to support them first, as opposed to, casting a wider net? And is there somebody more logical for them to support them as well? Is there a more sustainable solution, somebody much closer to that shelter as well? So then I'll pivot over to our Lifesaving University program. So Lifesaving University it's a really awesome program that we have here at JHS. We do it 3 different ways. We have, throughout the course of this year, started to do some on the road trainings. We offered our summit's a really big example of that. We also hosted a fundraising event earlier this year down in Daytona Beach for Florida shelters to learn more about our fundraising strategies and tactics. We also held a customer service training over on the Gulf side of the state. So we're always trying to make it as easy as possible for people. Not everybody can pack up and go to a conference or go to some big training. So we'll try to bring stuff to people as well. We do have in-person training. That's the majority of our Lifesaving U. Is people will come to Jacksonville Humane Society and work alongside of our team, train on all sorts of different stuff. Long stay task force is always a big one. That's a huge hit. We'll always talk about that when people come to visit. But we've had people come for strategic planning learning or board development, all the way down to play groups or volunteer engagement. So, we try to tailor our programs to whatever the shelter's needs and also meet them where they are. We don't expect anybody to walk in and to become JHS or have the resources that we're blessed with, but that we can try to help troubleshoot and meet them where they are is really valuable. And vice versa. We learn a ton when people come to visit us too. We definitely value that as well. And of course, virtual. The reality is there's a lot of virtual offerings out there. So we have started to offer some virtual trainings as well for people who just can't get out on the road.
Sorry, Lawrence, do you want me to hit these slides? You kind of just went over all the value.
Yeah, I just went over them all right in a row.
There we go.
We were fortunate enough to receive we call it the Lifesaving U Lodge. Petco Love is a huge sponsor of ours and helps a ton with a lot of this Lifesaving Florida Leaders statewide work. So we have an actual little house there, which is pretty cool. People can come and stay for free. For Florida residents, our Florida shelters can stay for no cost. Again, cost is always a barrier for people, so we try our best to reduce that so that we can get the training in folks' hands. And then, like I touched on before, the topics run the gamut from how can we keep animals out of the shelter, what can we do for community cats, manage admissions, all that kind of stuff. Of course, adoptions, we find a lot. That's one that we are really, really driving right now too, is we send out a questionnaire, people fill out the information. Most folks raise their hand and say they're doing open adoptions, but when it really comes to discussing the specifics about their adoption program, we find that the adoptions aren't as open as they always, as they identify them to be, and that's a barrier. That's a huge barrier in animals getting out of their shelter, is because they're not openish. Exactly right, Bobby. That it's just not quite what we had in mind. And it's not like poorly intentioned, but it's those little tiny barriers, that second page of the application, some of those other things that are in place that make it really, really difficult for animals to leave. And then, all that good stuff. And just a couple of testimonials from shelters who came and had a visit here at our shelter. And Lindsay, I think that's pretty much it on my side. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lindsay Layendecker. She is our Director of Community Partnerships, and she's going to talk about our Long Stay Task Force.
Yes, one of the most popular requests for Lifesaving University that we do with Florida Leaders and Lifesaving is our training that we do for long stay pets. And just to give you a quick background, my role primarily at JHS, I do a lot of our grant work, networking with other nonprofits in the community, as well as overseeing our communications. So that just tells you a little bit about, I'm not so much on the ops side. But long stay pets, we define those at the Jacksonville Humane Society of pets who have been in our shelter care for 30 or more days. This can include time at other shelters. As Lawrence mentioned, we partner very closely with our good friends over at the city municipal shelter. So if we transfer in a dog or cat who has been with them for quite some time, we will put them, kind of mark them as a long stay, just to make sure that their stay in the shelter, in any shelter, isn't any longer than it needs to be. But one important thing that I think is so important about having a long stay task force is that it shifts your mindset and it shifts your goal from being reactive into being proactive. So often in animal sheltering, it's, oh my gosh, I have to put this fire out. I've got to deal with this. I've got to deal with that. And the long stay task force, it kind of seems like all of a sudden it'll hit you out of nowhere. Like, we've got these dogs that have been with us forever. Or we've got this FLV cat that we just can't find a home for. But with a long stay program, you can decrease your overall length of stay and increase the rate of your adoptions for pets in your care. And it's a much more proactive approach. Some things to consider before you implement your long stay task force. As Lawrence mentioned, we do talk about this with our friends who come to Lifesaving University. But a lot of times it's not just about what are you posting on Facebook or, what are you telling people when they come inside. Just some things to consider are, do you practice open adoptions, or do you have barriers in place like lengthy applications, referrals, high prices, or have you removed them and replaced them with non-judgmental adoption counseling? Do you provide daily enrichment to your animals, both in and out of their kennels? Are you reducing fear, anxiety, stress, and frustration in pets as well as people? And is your staff trained to provide excellent customer service? So what we have learned is that length of stay is really a whole shelter approach. It's not just about having the most creative post on Facebook. It's not just about having, the best adoption counselor in the world. It's really about everyone's role. And the long stay task force has really motivated our staff for everyone to take ownership and keeping our length of stay low and taking a lot of pride in that. And we do want to give a shout out to our friends at Maddie's for inspiring us. Big bragging rights. We're super proud of the fact that we won most creative overall in the 2018 Get 'em Home Challenge with our long stay task force. We put it in place for the challenge and we have been using it ever since. So we have been, oh no, I just realized I set myself up to do mental math. I don't know how many years that is. Is that 4 years? We've been doing it for 4 years. And it's something we put in place, for to win a challenge, to win a grant. And we've been using it and developing it and seeing it save lives. So thank you, Maddie's, for always challenging us, keeping us on our toes. And I just want to I'll give you a real quick overview of what the long stay task force is. And then as everyone has mentioned, and if I believe someone put it in the chat, we'll go into this a little bit deeper on our webcast with Maddie's on Wednesday. But the long stay task force, this is a strategic assembly of staff members from different departments. We meet every single month and we evaluate the best practices for pets with a 30-day or more length of stay. We also analyze data to inform decisions about our procedure and our protocol. So we have a member from just about every department. I attend. My communications, our communications engagement assistant attends, volunteer coordinator, humane educator, adoptions manager, our shelter med manager, our director of ops. We have somebody representative from kind of every department, just because we do take a whole shelter approach. So it's a strategic assembly and we do meet monthly. Why so many people? That's a lot of people, right? Why does everybody need to be in the room? Isn't it just adoptions? Isn't it just marketing? Yeah, my answer to that is no. Okay. There are certain things that you think may influence your length of stay, like the type of animal you have in your shelter. What is their size? What's their age? their appearance, whether they're dogs or cats. Oh, we just don't do enough marketing on Facebook. Man, y'all can tell I got a grudge against Facebook this morning. I keep pointing it out like, hey, it's all about Facebook. And I think that's because when you're the person responsible for marketing at a shelter organization, you know that people come to you and they're like, Lindsay, can you please just put it on Facebook like that's the solution, to every single answer. And sometimes I'm like, no, Mark Zuckerberg's really didn't create that for that to be the end all be all for animal welfare, but that's okay. And one thing we notice a lot when people come to Lifesaving University is that it's funny because they seem to think that maybe in the beginning, they think their dogs and cats are a little bit different than the dogs and cats that we have here at the Humane Society in Jacksonville, but our dogs are just as big, just as rowdy. Our cats they've got FIV, they've got they've got it all, diabetes, you name it. They've got a little bit of everything, but because we're strategic and proactive, I feel like that's what keeps our length of stay low. Things that do influence length of stay are your adoption policies, is the enrichment that your animals are receiving, the proper veterinary care. The marketing does play a role, your customer service, the participation levels that you're allowing your volunteers to engage. Having a foster care program that's focusing on an outcome goal and engaging your community. Those are the things that influence your length of stay. And those are the things we focus on with our length of stay task force. And then why do we meet monthly? So we meet every single month. It's less overwhelming than weekly. I feel like weekly might be a little bit too redundant. And it's important that we meet monthly because it prevents staff favorites and it catches pets who fall through the cracks. So prior to doing this, what we noticed was that everybody would kind of get fixated on one particular pet, like, oh, it's like a dog with an overbite or a cat with, like one eye, and everybody is kind of hooked on that one animal. And you're kind of ignoring like the run of the mill brown dog that's been sitting there for 35 days and is just like a plain old regular great dog, but just no one's signing in to meet it, no one's adopting it, and no one's talking about it because you've got this like little underbite overwhelmingly thing that your staff is like fawning over, which is great. But this system kind of prevents that and makes sure that all animals are being looking at individually and equitably. And it also ensures that communication is fluid and purposeful. Our CEO, Denise, likes to tell us that communication is no matter where you go, everybody's going to say communication could really be improved. And they'll put it on their staff surveys, which is fine. So our long stay task force helps ensure that that communication is constantly happening and that everyone is in the loop. So that is why our long stay task force meets monthly. And then what do we talk about in the meeting? Literally, we go through every single pet. I can tell you, there was a month where we canceled the long stay meeting because we did not have any long stay pets. We did not need to meet. We didn't have a single animal in the building that had been with us or in foster care for 30 or more days because of this process. So that felt really good to cancel a meeting. But when we do have the meetings, we go through each pet on the list individually and we'll evaluate their barriers to outcome. Sometimes we'll just sit there and be like, oh my gosh, that's a terrible picture. Why hasn't anybody caught that? Let's do a picture. Or recently we had a dog and the dog's name was Alpha. And we kind of all looked at each other like, Alpha dog, that's probably not the best name for a dog. People are going to think like alpha male, that type of thinking. So we just changed it to Alfie. Sometimes it's just little things that you need to think about. Or, hey, does this cat need to be moved to a place where more adopters are going to see it? So we'll make sure that a plan is developed for each pet that includes strategic steps and meeting the goals of adoption. And we will go over a bit more of that strategy when we do the webcast, but that's literally, we go through every single pet and make sure they all get equal time being talked about and coming up with a plan. And then what role does data play? So we examine what is really impacting our length of stay. One thing we noticed early on was that we kept discussing pets that were in foster care. Now we really only do 2 weeks. We do short-term foster care, but we used to do really long foster care for dogs and cats and adoption ambassadors, and it just wasn't working in our community. And we just found out that all of the pets that were in these foster care homes were just kind of staying there with no outcome. And that really helped us kind of change the direction of our foster care, primarily for dogs. And so we looked at the data and we were like, oh my gosh, like there's a correlation here. We need to change what we're doing. We also look at what influences adopters and what barriers you're putting in place that you might not be otherwise paying attention to. One thing we have at JHS is we use a system very similar to when you go to a restaurant, you put your name on a list. We use that with our adoption counseling. And we can go back and see like people, you know, if they're not signing in for a particular dog. And for some of our length of stay ones, people weren't signing in, but we had a really long wait time. So we came up with a cool system called a lightning pass. And if you want to see one of our long stay dogs, you can get bumped to the top of that line. And that was a decision we used looking at data. So data really does help us with that length of stay. And then if you want more, and hopefully you do, you will join us for the upcoming webcast this Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we'll do a deeper dive into this. We'll talk a little bit more. I'll show you the tools that we use. I'll share our SOP and do like a deeper examination and help you set up a long stay task force at your own shelter. That's it.
Oh my gosh, Lindsay, Lawrence, so much great information. We won't go too deep into questions because I highly want to encourage everyone to visit and join the webcast on Wednesday. But I do want to get to my brother Javier's question because I think scalability is important. You know, coming from somewhere where Javier is with an LA County where they might have many more animals. Lindsay, how many animals did you typically see in this? And do you feel like if you're having a lot more animals, should you spend more time in the month, or what's that magic formula y'all have been using?
So for us, it depends on the time of year. So in the winter months, we generally don't have a lot of cats to discuss at all. So we'll spend more time on dogs. But I would say we've got, it could be, we probably have about maybe 40 on our list right now. But if you need to extend the meeting or maybe do one meeting for dogs, one meeting for cats, I would say go with what works best for your shelter. I can tell you, I think we're on track to bring in about 9,000 animals this year. So I don't know if that gives you sort of something to scale it against, but I would say do what works best for you. Maybe split it up, dogs and cats. And we have one person in the meeting who keeps everybody on track and does not let the discussion go off topic. So you may need that as well.
That is exactly what I was just typing. Get a meeting facilitator, someone who is going to say, time's up, let's go to the next.
Yeah, and we do send out the list 2 days before, and everyone is required to look at it beforehand because you may not be as familiar with every animal on the list. So that way in the meeting, we're not all spending time like looking at their shelter love profile and being like, wait, who's this? How'd they come in? What's this? It's like, please come to the meeting prepared. That's what we've been able to do to save time.
Well, I love it. And the one thing that y'all did not mention, but is a absolute perfect example is, I don't know if y'all noticed, but the way that this organization thanks their sponsors is like a 12 out of 10. Did y'all see that big ass check go all over Florida with them?
There it is.
Make sure, folks, when people are giving you money, you honor them. And also the Petco Love Lounge. I'm going to say, I heard a rumor that y'all updated your SEO to recruit more honeymooners to Florida with that branding right there. So amazing. Thank you again, folks, for being here.
Well, we did go against calling it the Love Shack. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. So thank you all.
Make it through branding.
Please join that webinar. As a reminder, folks, this is the last iteration of this specific Monday call at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We are going to be merging the calls after a brief break, which are going to be at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time moving forward. So do not miss that link. You'll also be emailed a link about this. And just my closing thoughts for all of you on my last call is, I love all of you so much. And I'm just so honored to be able to share and host this space with all of you. And remember, we at Maddie's and the Maddie's family, we are not the ones that make this community. You are the ones that make this community. These last 2 years have been such a trying time for our country, for our world, and our industry. And showing up and seeing your faces every single Monday is really what got us through this as a Maddie's family and as an industry and as a community. So always lean in with love. Always lead in with kindness. And remember, thanks to Maddie's, and we're going to be seeing you very soon at 11 a.m. So cheers, everyone. Hope you have an awesome Monday.